Hello and welcome back, or for the first time. It's here that we continue the pursuit of growth in both the personal and professional realm by primarily reading books and discussing them. The book list that we are working off from consists of recommendations from either close friends and or from family, coach, or other well-respected parties. Sometimes it's simply a reference to a book from within a book, which sends me running into cliche run, my hot little hands so that I may plant the seeds of wisdom into my fertile mind. This particular book comes by way of recent chance meeting at a local networking group, the Triangle Sales Think Tank, which is a spot where some of the prominent local sales folk may meet and from time to time exchange ideas of brilliance. In one such exchange with Lawrence Hart, who is a serial entrepreneur, did the get to know you dance. And while we did our verbal twirls and plies, he talked excitedly about this book. For some reason, the title failed to stay in my mind, and I'm quite sure that I asked for the title a number of times. A bit later in the meeting, Lawrence was referred to by one of the very perceptive members of the group, Linda Guten, as being one of the smartest businessmen that she knew. And as far as I could tell, this was genuine praise. I must read this book, and I must read it now. And so now that I have, and I shall regale you with some of the nuggets or perceived insights that I received from this book. And as a side note, this foreword for this book was written by Neil Rackman, author of Spin Selling. This is important because as far as I can tell, he has quite a following, and according to Wikipedia, pioneered consultative selling. This was a book recommended to me by Cisco sales managers when the question came up when I could learn more about sales. AKA, the guy has some clout. Further evidence, or at least finger pointing, to the worthy ideas contained on the pages within this book. Who is Mark Roberge, and why do I want to read this book? Mark Roberge is one of the initial members of HubSpot, a company that went from 0 to 100 million in a relatively short period of time. He's an MIT grad. He was the first sales manager from HubSpot. He had no sales experience himself and was a self-proclaimed quant. This book outlines how he sought out his sales force and how he developed practices and processes to develop them. How, what, and why he drove his teams to success, along with recommendations for others in achieving what he calls a predictable and reliable way to run a sales team, as well as generate sales revenue sustainably. How does he accomplish this? In one part, he gives us the sales hiring formula. He also prefaces and ends this section with a "your mileage may vary. This is what worked for me," of course, suggesting a similar formula may work for you, read as "season to taste" or "tinker till satisfied." Immediately, you run into his first finding when seeking characteristics of the successful salesman. His regression analysis found that the characteristics traditionally sought after, such as closing ability and needs identification, had the worst correlations with success. This is bookended by preparation and adaptability. This may be some great news for some of the people out there who are terrible at closing and or needs analysis. Of course, it may not be such great news if you are working on closing and developing your needs analysis skills. Oh, the ever-changing landscape of the workforce and the skills that are needed. Could you imagine the world flipping on its axis and the sun rising from the west? Mark is adamant about tracking everything and utilizing the data that he gathers to drive his next steps. He also highlights his primary candidate criteria, or as I like to read it, who I'm up against. This section bothers me a little bit. If you focus on certain criteria who follows a particular trend, then how will you ever stumble upon the rare gem, the outlier who has the potential to shift the trajectory of your company's future? You could also read this as, I don't think based on the supply criteria I would have made it through the door. Of course, he does have some criteria that will allow for a miscreant or two to slip through the cracks. Go underdogs. So he has his hires, now he needs to train them. I will not go into much detail on this one. Suffice to say that the modules he provides is that he has each salesperson create and run their own successful blog. Interestingly enough, HubSpot also has a free course to learn more about blogging. Should you succeed in completing this, of course, they will provide you a certificate of completion. He also provides some keen insights as to looking for the right sales manager. He mentions reading a number of books to no avail, management books to no avail. It is not until he begins reading books about leadership does he believe he's retrieving useful insight. Luckily for us, he also provides us with this list of useful books. I've listed out these books for you on my website, Brandon Handley Live, underneath the Sales Acceleration Formula book review. So feel free to head over there and take a look there for all those books. And of course, I'm sure one or two of these books is going to make it onto my list. He's also found that he begins to refer to the sales manager as a sales coach. He provides his guidance on metric-driven sales coaching, and he also continues how his compensation plan is initially created as well as how it evolves. In short, it is not different from any other training these days. Identify desired behaviors and reward accordingly. Of particular interest in the sales coaching, he was able to drive organic adoption of process changes. I will leave it to you to read more. And as far as the whole review goes, if you're not currently familiar with today's sales landscape, this book will set you straight. If you're not familiar with the SaaS or sales as a service terminology, or anything as a service, this book will provide you with some solid background. If you're not familiar with inbound sales, marketing, you need to be. After you read this book, you will be. The sales landscape is changing in the blink of an eye. It may have already happened. Many of the ideas and principles I read in this book I've also recently heard on the following two podcasts, Linking into Sales with the Jill Raleigh episode particularly, as well as Roy Vaden's recent The Action Catalyst episode with Jonah Berger. How's this book rated? What is the scale? I rate this book on a timely to misses the boat scale. If you read this book and become current with sales along with the mechanisms and motivators, then it is timely. If you don't, then you stand a chance of missing the boat and will end up, as the saying goes, swimming with the fishes. If you've read this book and or are planning to, please leave a comment. Thank you.